Hi, everyone. Andrea Fair here with Flying Free Ministries. I'm so excited to introduce to you to Lisa Ray Morris. She is an author of two amazing books. I am telling you, I just finished them like last month, and I was panicking throughout them because I'm like, what I was actually the second one is specifically because I'm like, what if she hasn't written her third book yet? Where is it? How will I get it? And anyways, it is she gives you some space, so it's going to be okay. But I strongly encourage you to buy these books. I bought them for my daughter and stole them back from her because I need to read them faster than she could, and she's 16. So, Lisa, thanks so much for joining us today. And where are you from? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thanks for having me. So I was born in Arizona, actually. Lived there the first 25 years of my life, but then I married a pilot who whisked me off to the Pacific Northwest. So now I live in Washington State, not too far from Portland. So we're just across the river from all the crazy right now, and
Mhm.
we're under just a little bit of smoke, but not too bad today.
Wow. Okay. And tell us about your writing journey. Like, have you always been a writer, or did you, yeah, is that something new for you, or?
Writing has always been a way that I have expressed deep emotion and just stuff that was in there that needed to get out. So I don't really write because I want to. I write because I have to. But as far as how God has used that during my life, I started feeling like I wanted to be a professional author when I was 9. And then God put a 30-year timer on that, and I published my first work when I was 39. So, but in the meantime, I had, diaries and blogs and just different little projects that I would do, or I would edit someone else's stuff. And so it was just enough of an outlet. But, there are seasons in life where it's just not practical to devote yourself to a lot of writing, having little kids and those kind of things. I think I needed to live a lot more life before I was ready to really hit publish. And I think I needed to get my kids out of diapers and, to a place where they're a little more independent. So yeah, that was, and that's fine. It's good.
Mhm. Oh, I totally can relate to that. I started my blog when I was struggling with chronic illness, and it was, yeah, my outlet to, and I was like, I would always be like, no, Jesus, I don't wish to write that out loud outside my body. And he's like, no, it's good. Other people need it. I'm like, ah. And so I get, so it's the call out of obedience, but also yeah, seasons, it looks different in each season. So.
Oh my goodness, that I can totally relate to that. I remember I actually wrote a blog post about 10 years ago about not wanting to talk.
Right. There's just
So you're singing my song there.
well, and I think that that's cool because I am a little bit tired of being the vulnerable one, and how you just are like, God made me this way, but it's not my favorite. And it depends on the day specifically and the emotion. I mean, fun is fun and joy is fun, but the other ones, anyway. But I think it really relates to our focus this season, which is freedom in relating to others. And I've noticed that even as I show up messy, other people feel that they are allowed to be the same and be real, right? And so I love that in your characters in your book, they're allowed to just be where they're at. And I was like, oh man, I love this. Like, she's not cleaning up anything. This is real life. And even though it's a sci-fi. So when you think of freedom while relating to others, what comes to mind for you?
I think for me, um, I think it's humility and courage and compassion. I think you need a really healthy mixture of those three things. Humility, just because, I grew up in a culture where you have to put a sheen on things, and there's certain things that you just don't talk about out loud. And when people say, how are you? You automatically say fine. And then you just work out your own stuff on your own because nobody wants to hear about that. And so, that lack of humility, that need for people to think you have it all together, does not, it's the opposite of freedom in relating to others, because then what it actually does is has this effect on people around you where they feel a little intimidated, because it really does appear that you never have issues. And so then they feel like they can't open up about their issues or even show weakness because you don't have any weaknesses. So then there's just this kind of closure, and everybody's kind of like not real with each other anymore. When, if you had the compassion to see that other people are hurting and the desire to meet them where they're at, then that would open you up and realize, that pride has no place. So, and then of course that takes courage to say, hey, I am a mess, want to hear about it. So
Oh, yeah. Oh, for real. So when you grew up in that kind of a culture, what was the tipping point for you to be like, okay, I need to be authentic. I need to share how I really am, or how has that process been for you?
I think when we decide how we want to be in life, we need to look forward to what the end result of that is.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then figure out, where do I want to end up? And then reverse engineer that to, what do I need to do now to get there? And when I look at the people who live the way that they did, where they never really let anybody in, they didn't have a lot of genuine relationships, and I looked at how they were in their old age, and who knew them and how well they knew, and I realized that the people who love them the most are the people who knew them the least.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's a tragedy, and I don't want to end up like that when I get that age. So how can I change now so that I don't walk that same path and end up with no one really knowing who I am?
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's totally true. I remember in my first year of college, it was a small class, and it was a discipleship program, so we were all hanging out, and I was friends with everyone, but friends with no one. And I remember at the end of the year going, who are my people? Like like what have I done here? And it was just like a good eye opener to realize like I was there for everyone, but I wasn't necessarily letting them into my stuff. And so, I mean, and yet I was, because I remember being really authentic, but it was like I was journeying with so many people. It was not as deep and rich as it could have been had I just picked a few, right?
Yes.
So, mm. Ah. So have you always been able to relate to like the young adults, or is this like, have you like honed that skill, or tell us about your passion?
I think that the people I relate to the best are actually the elderly,
Okay,
and weirdly to men. Um,
tell me
I
more.
I was that Tom girl, the one who's always climbing trees and playing with bugs, and all of my friends were boys. And I remember my mom said, "Who do you want to invite to your sixth birthday party?" And I said, I named off a bunch of people. She's like, "How about any girls?" And I was like, "I don't know. That probably won't be any fun." So I was that girl.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, but I was also that girl who could never get a date because nobody took me seriously. I'd have the guy I liked come up to me and say, "Can I ask you a really important question?" I'm like, "Oh, this is it." And he'd be like, "Can you tell Carrie that I like her and ask her what she thinks about me?" So I was always that girl. So learning to relate to women was hard actually for me.
Mm.
I had to work at that,
Interesting.
but I've gotten better, and so yeah, that's taken time, but and I to this day I still kind of avoid large settings of women, like women's ministries and like women's retreats. I'm kind of like, oh, there's so much estrogen right now, I don't know.
Let's
But
do it.
I'm just being real right now, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I love it.
But yeah, then I realized, to be biased against anybody because of their gender or their age or anything like that is just to cheat myself, because
Mm.
obviously if there's kind of, I feel a resistance in myself, that means that there's more that I need to learn.
Right.
So
It's
but the elderly I've always loved, because I used to granny sit when I was a kid. I did a little bit of babysitting, but I did granny sitting for these ladies that would have Alzheimer's and their kids would need a vacation or time away, and I would go sit with them and make sure that nothing caught fire or whatever. And it was good fun, and I just enjoyed them. And I just loved to sit and listen to their stories. And so I had a lot of elderly friends growing up, so that was fun. But yeah, and so that meant I didn't really relate to the young very well. And I thought, what am I gonna do when I'm a mom and I just have this baby babbling at me and I just not gonna know what to say? And of course, Jesus is laughing at me. He's like, "You're gonna be fine." So anyway.
you gotta love hindsight, right? Like it's always just like how I remember with our first, I was just like, they say you're supposed to interact with them, but like I don't get like what would I mean, she's happy, I'm gonna read, we're gonna be fine. Like
Right.
we're gonna be the worst parent ever, I know it. But and I get the relating to guys thing actually, because I grew up with three brothers, and then we did fostering, so I had six brothers most of my life, and sometimes more than that, sometimes eight. But anyway, and so yeah, it was a lot of testosterone. So I am definitely the football mom who screams loudly, and basketball. And my friend challenged me once to like foosball in her basement, and I was like, yeah, it was. I'm still a little embarrassed about how into it. She was really good, and I didn't even know she played at all. And I'm like, whatever. Ah! But we had fun, and we're still friends. And so But I did have a friend, a really close friend, who really related with elderly people, and it was so awesome because we would play actually on the swings outside the old folks' home, and she's like, "Okay, let's go in," and I'm like, "Okay, what? You can't just go in," and she's like, "Oh, we do all the time," because their family, that's what they did. They went and visited, and it was such a rich experience just to learn how to love on elderly people. And yeah, so I get that. That's awesome. And yeah, isn't God good that He would just remind us, I made them all, so you'll be okay, and lean into me,
Yeah.
and I will help you.
One body, many parts.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So, how you've talked a little bit about having to learn how to, like, that, facing that resistance of like, okay, women are great, but how does that work? And leaning into that. So good for you. That makes me think of being in Bible school when there was dorms, and somebody, like a girl, came in and was like, "So I need, okay, what clothes do you have?" And I'm like, what is happening right now?" And she like looking at my clothes. I'm like, how? I'm like, okay, I think this is like a normal girl thing, and I have like nowhere. I'm like, I feel like I've read this in a book somewhere where you borrow clothes, but thankfully she picked clothes my boyfriend had given me, so I'm like, yeah, that's not happening. So we worked it out. But
That's hilarious.
depends on your experiences too, what you're used to, how you're used to relating to people. But
For sure.
so I'm curious about your novels then, because they are, I don't see them as being geared to elderly people, although I guess if someone has a great imagination, they could hop on. Why not? Tell me more about the journey behind them.
Well, um, there are definitely elderly people figure heavily into the plot because
Yeah,
it's, part one of the settings is a nursing home where my main character works.
okay.
And every single experience and interaction that she has with the elderly are actually based on experiences that I had working in a nursing home, so most of those are pretty genuine. I didn't even bother changing the names, honestly. Every single elderly person is named after themselves of someone I knew, but
That's
so
awesome.
there was a Betty that always threw food behind her. And there were three Irenes in that nursing home, so it
Wow.
was fantastic. I didn't really set out. I know the common conventional wisdom for fiction is you should always know who exactly your audience is and pick a demographic and stick with it. And for me, I just wanted a book that I liked. I just wanted a book that I would want to read and that I wouldn't mind letting my kids read. So I think that's supposedly the worst kind of hubris, and apparently authors aren't supposed to do that, but I did it, and I guess it worked out fine.
You totally
So,
did. Hello, you're up
yeah.
for a award.
Thank you. But I just wanted it to be a fun adventure. So it actually started out by me being in a weird mood one day. It was one of those days where I had something in my, some kind of emotion I couldn't pinpoint, and I thought, I don't want to write anything right now. I just want to go on Pinterest, and I just want to just look at really pretty castles, just mysterious old buildings and those kinds of things. And so I went on there and I found a picture of a ruined castle in St. Cyrus, Scotland, which is on the east coast of Scotland. It's on the shore of the North Sea. And it's not super big, but it's not very well known either. And it's amazing. It's just there was just something about it that intrigued me. So I started to research the history of the building. And then I thought, what if I wrote this fantastical story where this castle could appear anywhere in the world? What if it was magical and it just showed up places, and so I just kind of got thinking, and then I kind of ran that by my then 12-year-old, and she's like, Mom, that's stupid. What if it landed on someone's house?
I
So,
love
if you want to find plot holes, ask a 12-year-old because they're very practical. And so I was like, if this could pass muster with a 12-year-old, then it's going to be fine. So she's like, and I said, okay, well, what if you go in the castle and you find something magical that you could transport yourself from one place to another? She's like, well, like a magic mirror? I'm like, yeah. She goes, it's been done. Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, Mom, that's dumb. And she's not like mean. She's just super honest, and
it.
that's what I like about her. So she's 15 now. She's gonna be 16 in
Wow.
February. She's driving. It's crazy.
Yep.
So she said, what if it's not the mirror? What if it's the wood? What if it's the frame? What if it's made of something interesting? And then I kind of got thinking about trees, and And then I realized, oh my gosh, it's a tree. It's not a castle at all. It's so it just turned into this whole, it just took on a life of its own, and then I couldn't not write it. And I
Amazing.
have always wanted to set a novel in a nursing home. So I just was like, this is the perfect opportunity to do this. So what if there's a guy who's in a nursing home, but he's not supposed to be, and people think he's crazy, but he's really not because he's just a time traveler. So
Uh, okay, you make me want to read it again. Like honestly, I think it should be a movie. I am not even joking. Like I'm not even just saying that
uh,
because we're on air, but I'm like, this is great. Like, and I love the richness of the senior center and like having those different dynamics that people don't usually talk about, right? And I mean, time travel too. And I mean, time travel, yeah, it's been done, but super duper not this way. And so it's like, wow. Oh, I love that. Oh, okay. When's the third book coming out? Do we know this information?
I don't have an actual date, but it is cooking. I have 6 chapters in right
Yay,
now.
yay. Keep going after this
Yeah.
interview. That's your job. Oh no, just just
I will
bossy.
get right on it.
Excellent. Oh, well, I was wondering if you have any advice that you'd like to give to someone who is struggling. Maybe they have, yeah, maybe let's go for elderly. They have an elderly individual and they're just struggling with that. How do I love on them when they don't know me part of the time, or how, or anyone else, or maybe people, or maybe the women who are, yeah, that don't love the big ladies events and are like, I need to connect with people, and now I'm married, and how do I have friends when it doesn't really work this way very good? So any wisdom for us?
Yeah, I feel like uh, that wisdom can come from Romans 12, where it talks about not thinking of ourselves more highly than we ought to, but in humility, having a really good assessment of ourselves based on our faith that God gives us. And then he goes on to talk about a body in many parts. And then in Philippians 2, it talks about not doing things out of selfishness, but considering others better than ourselves. So if you just kind of take those two ideas and mash them together, I think there's a really good dynamic for relating to other people, which is that figure out where you fit in, figure out where God has you with those people. What is his assignment for you in that situation? But also just think of them as primary.
Mm.
And because I think so many times in relationships we avoid people, or we're afraid of people because we're afraid of a bad outcome, or we're afraid that they're not going to accept us, or that it's just, like I had somebody say, oh, I never give gifts to so and so anymore because they never send a thank you note. And I thought, how unfortunate, because we don't give gifts to be thanked, we give gifts to bless someone. So if you think of yourself as a gift, you're not offering your time and your attention and your love to be thanked or to be accepted in a certain way, but because God wants you there,
Wow.
because you're presenting yourself to him, and he's going to slot you in at the right place and make you a blessing to someone, whether they realize it then or 5 years later or whenever it is. Even, you mentioned the elderly and people with dementia, for example. You could go hang out with them for 2 hours and they won't remember it 10 minutes later.
Mm.
And you think, what is the point of that? But the point is, Jesus said, when you come and visit me, or you come and give me a cup of cold water, I know, and I remember, and I'll reward you. And I think even in the brain of someone who doesn't have a great short-term memory, I feel like the good feelings of friendship that you've given them, I think those last. I think those hang on. So I think that they, in somewhere in there, they know they've had a good day, even if they can't remember why. So,
Yep.
it's just all those things, just knowing that Jesus notices and he's got an assignment for you. I feel like I'm kind of like talking all over the place, but you know what I mean?
No, you're
So,
not.
doing it for other reasons than what that person is going to directly say to you or how they're going to directly react, but realizing that there's a bigger picture and how you fit into
Oh, I love that. That's powerful, lady. Just the reality, like, and to be able to perceive ourselves, we are the gift, and we don't need to be thanked. Like that speaks loud to me because yeah, I have, kids from 11 up to 16 and a half,
Yeah,
and as a mom and even as an entrepreneur, you're kind of like, okay, I'm doing this stuff, but I don't even know. And it's like, hey, that's not what
right.
it's about. It's all about serving, right? And
Yeah,
knowing that this is the assignment I've been given. And so I just show up and I serve and I do my
yeah.
thing, and God
Because
does his thing, and it is. I always tell people, especially on interview day, my family's like, I'm all just really exhausted and super hyper. And they're like, how was your day? I'm like, oh my word, I talked to all these people. And I'm like, I don't even know if people will listen, but you know what? It was so good. So I love it how God, yeah, when we obey, he blesses us. So even as we are stretching ourselves to interact maybe in different areas, just
Absolutely.
he will
Yeah, because
always,
we're not presenting ourselves to people, we're presenting ourselves to him. So he
yeah.
sees everything. He keeps a record and he'll reward us. So,
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Lisa Ray, for your time today. And I look forward to your third book. So please continue. And I'll make sure that I get your link so that people can check out and buy your books because, hello, a great gift for yourself and then for others. And so, thanks so much for your time.
yeah, thank you. It was fun.
You bet.